Houston, contact with a test 1.
Hello, it's Scott Manley here. It's been over 20 years since the International Space Station began construction and almost 10 years since it was completed. It has been a massive international project to build the components and assemble them in space, and now they are looking to add commercial sections to the space station. And less than a month ago, NASA signed a deal with a company called Axiom Space to start building out a new commercial extension to the space station. Now, this stems from a 2016 request by NASA to look at commercial options, followed by a government mandate to do this. Last year, they published prices for using ISS facilities, and now there is this deal to add new sections. It was thought that there were two companies in the running for this, one of whom was Bigelow Aerospace, who of course built the Bigelow Expandable Activity Module. That's a spherical module on the left side of the station there. But I suspect that Axiom won because the contractors they're working with are the people who built the space station already. Many of the executives at the company have strong links to the ISS program already, including Charles Bolden, who is a consultant that works for the organization. So according to the plan, Axiom will be sending some missions to the space station soon, and in 2024 is when they plan to start launching the 3 new modules that they will be attaching. The first node is AXN1, that's Axiom Node 1. That's attached to the common berthing adapter on the front of Node 2 on the existing space station. To do this, they have to remove the pressurized mating adapter on the front. That's the docking adapter that's going to be used by crewed vehicles such as Starliner or Dragon. For those of you unfamiliar with how the space station is bolted together, there are pressurized mating adapters for docking, which themselves have the international docking adapters on the outside, but most of the US side of the station are docked together using the common berthing mechanism. And this has been used for things like the Dragon cargo spacecraft as well. Anyway, point is, we don't know where that pressurized mating adapter is going to end up. So the Node 1 launch also includes the observation cupola, which is removed and moved to the nadir port of their Node 1. The next launch brings up the habitation module, AAXH1. No, it is not some sort of flu virus. It does offer some fantastic accommodations for visiting astronauts. These are proper little cabins like you might find in a capsule hotel, designed by Philippe Starck, no relation to Tony. They give you everything you could want as a resident of a space station, a nice big view and a little television, which looks like an iPad, which I suspect is what they might be. And look, it's very clear that when they say astronauts, they're also saying space tourists, especially the observation deck. It is way beyond what we've seen in the European design cupola. This offers amazing views, and yes, wow, I hope it is worth the price of admission, because that is frankly spectacular. The final module is the Research and Manufacturing Facility, AXRMF, and that's supposed to provide, of course, microgravity capabilities so you can do your research, possibly manufacture things. Certainly, people have talked about space manufacturing for a long time, but there are barriers to you because it's so darn expensive to put stuff in space. But that being said, there is good research coming out of the space station, and having more space to do research is always good. The final component is the power and thermal control module. Up to this point, all the modules have been getting their power and thermal management from the rest of the International Space Station, but adding this allows them to extend out the tower and get their own power capabilities. And this is going to be important for the next part of this plan. So yeah, this thing folds up, creates a nice big tower that is kept far away from the panels on the space station. It's also worth noting that this will also contain the airlock for people that need to do EVA. Now at this point the animation continues because one of the things they demonstrate is removing modules from the existing space station. This is the Leonardo module, which was originally a fancy cargo container which flew inside the space shuttle's payload bay. This and other modules could become part of the Axiom segment. And then a decade from now, when the International Space Station has lived beyond its usefulness and no one wants to maintain it, the Axiom station can disconnect and become its own entity. And that's one of the ultimate goals, to have a purely commercial station operating in low Earth orbit, transition slowly away from the International Space Station. It's argued that we've spent so much time in low Earth orbit, we've learned so much, that it is now well within the grasp of a commercial organization to entirely run their own space program for profit. Meanwhile, of course, the government's role is to continue to push higher and further to do those things that are unprofitable, and of course to subcontract and use the facilities on these commercial systems, just like the government is currently using commercial launch providers to supply the space station. Now, as for launch providers, looking at the modules, these two modules on the left are supposed to be about 11 meters long, so when you include the observation module on Node 1, that actually makes it too long for the standard Falcon 9 fairing, although SpaceX has talked about a long fairing. I've never seen one actually built or manifested, but in theory, in terms of mass, this will fit on Atlas V, Vulcan, it'll fit on Ariane as well, and of course the Falcon 9. In terms of payload mass, that's not the problem. The only question is the fairing size for the first couple of launches. The pressure vessels are all going to be built by Thales Alenia, who of course build the pressure vessels for the Leonardo modules, for Cygnus, for the European ATV. So they've got a lot of experience that is still current in terms of building out aluminium pressure housings. All of the modules, when launched, are spacecraft in their own right. They all have propulsion, they have attitude control, they have the ability to fly and rendezvous with the space station where they can be assembled. So they just need a launch vehicle. They don't need something like the space shuttle, which was of course required to assemble large parts of the space station. And in terms of crew and cargo transportation, I believe that node on the front there is supposed to be an international docking adapter so that a Dragon 2 or a Starliner can fly carrying astronauts and or cargo. And while we like to talk about industry and research in space, I do honestly think there is going to be a significant market for space tourism, and they've definitely designed their station with that in mind, with the habitation module having lots of big windows and this absolutely spectacular viewing gallery here. I do kind of like the opening or the protective plates mechanism for this, but that just would be absolutely fabulous. But this isn't going to happen right away. It's going to be 2024 before the first module goes up, 2028 by the time it's ready to unhook, and I suspect it will remain attached to the ISS as long as there is funding for the ISS, because it's better to stick together in space. It will be required to stay at the same orbital inclination as the International Space Station, which does mean a small penalty of about 5 to 10% on the payload that can be delivered, as opposed to a 28.5 degree orbit. And of course, there is the question of funding. I'm not really clear how much money is coming from NASA and how much is supposed to come from private investors. I'm not sure how much money they've actually raised. But look, in terms of private space station projects, this is definitely one of the best planned and best designed. I don't think there's any question as to the technical feasibility of what they've designed and what they're working on, and they do have the buy-in of NASA, so that is critical. So I'm hoping this private space station is successful, and I hope it's just the first of many. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.